Happy Friday. We are at a different time today because we have a very special guest. We have Rabbi Nancy Landsman with us. And Rabbi Nancy Landsman is a very special kind of rabbi. Not only is she a rabbi, but she's also a cantor. And she calls herself sometimes the personal rabbi. And I want to introduce you. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. And why don't you tell us a little bit how your journey a little bit and how you are serving your community.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really very honored. Thank you, Betsy. So my original training is in social work in gerontology before I started my cantorial career, which was over 30 years long. I went back to school in 2012. God had other plans for me to go beyond what I thought was an amazing life and career as a cantor for all those years. I went back to school, to rabbinical school, and was ordained in January of 2016. So I'm going to my 6-year anniversary of being an ordained rabbi. And as a rabbi, I found that my work has come full circle, starting with social work. I went into social work to help people. And as a cantor, I was mainly singing and doing all the teaching of the bar and bat mitzvah students and directing the choirs and co-officiating services of all kinds with the rabbis with whom I've worked throughout my career. Now, as a rabbi, I have my own congregation that started in 2012 with 10 people. I had no idea what would happen, how we would grow. It became very clear to me that 10 people could not provide me a salary. And I had to figure out, well, how, while I'm going to rabbinical school, how am I going to support myself? Thankfully, my children were grown. One was in college at the time, but I had to figure it out. And I learned that as a cantor, many families who were looking for somebody to officiate a wedding or a funeral or a bar mitzvah, they really wanted a rabbi. And I'm like, well, rabbis and cantors do so much of the same work. And no matter what I would say, people would often come back with, but I need a rabbi. I want a rabbi. So I said, well, I'm in rabbinical school, I'm not ordained yet. So once I became ordained, all the doors opened up for me.
So interesting.
So interesting that so many Jewish people just don't realize. They think cantors just sing, and we don't just sing. So now I'm the singing rabbi, and actually my tagline is your personal rabbi, because what I realized is that doing this work, trying to grow the congregation, we're still small, but here we are 9 years later, and we're growing, but I still don't make a living doing what I do for the congregation. I mainly make a living serving, I think, what is the largest population of Jewish people, which are those who don't want to belong to a congregation. Their children are grown, or they don't feel a sense of community is so important. A Jewish community, they might have a community at a country club or a health club or elsewhere. So yet, when there's a baby that's born, a Jewish baby, they may want to give that baby a Hebrew name. Maybe if it's a baby boy, the boy may be circumcised in the hospital, but they still want to have a naming ceremony for the baby boy. And certainly for a baby girl who's not usually circumcised, right, that they want a baby naming to give that baby a Hebrew name. And they'll call upon me for bar and bat mitzvahs. Many families who don't belong to a synagogue still want their child to carry on that tradition, that maybe the parents were bar or bat mitzvah when they were 13 years old or around their 13th birthday. So they call me to tutor their child and or to officiate the service for their child becoming bar bat mitzvah. And then certainly weddings, even if these are secular Jews who don't feel, as they often say to me, Rabbi, I'm not so Jewish, I'm not so religious. It's okay. I'm even more spiritually, culturally Jewish rather than so religious. I'm a Reform rabbi, but spiritually, culturally based. And I therefore officiate a lot of interfaith weddings. I'll co-officiate. Some clergy don't. I'm also a cantor, so I can sing and bring music to all of these simchas, all these celebrations. But most of the work I do is actually around the end of life. I am trained to do hospice work. I am trained to do chaplain work. I'm not board certified as a chaplain, but I have enough clinical pastoral education to do this work on a volunteer basis. I choose to do that. And so I do bereavement counseling, helping families and individuals who know that the end of life is coming. And therefore trying, with my tagline, your personal rabbi, meaning you don't need to belong to my congregation. If you belong to a congregation, you would have your own rabbi. I could still be your personal rabbi to help you at all stages of life. But as I mentioned, primarily it's near the end of life. Going to my original training in social work.
So interesting how your life has taken that turn to come right back to where your training is and combining your two loves.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think we all need balance in our lives. So people often say, "Oh my gosh, you officiate over 100 funerals a year. That must be so depressing." Honestly, strangely, it's not. I never say this, but families will say to me, "Oh, Rabbi, this is really more a celebration of his life or her life. We don't want this to be so depressing. We're sad that mom died or dad died, but we know we're not going to live forever. And so we want it to be a celebration of life." And so they often crave levity in these ceremonies.
And I think we have all experienced so much death in the last few years.
Yes.
And I think it is so wonderful that you are helping bring to the forefront that we need to talk about it. And it's okay to talk about it and to have somebody. Death is sort of the kind of thing that nobody wants to talk about. Everybody walks the other way. And obviously that leaves the people who are dying and the family a mess. So what you do is so beautiful and so wonderful. I thank you.
Well, I'm honored truly to be there for people at a time. I find so many people don't know with whom can they have this conversation. What's heavy on their heart, that especially somebody who knows that they're close to dying. They may not feel comfortable sharing with certain family members. They don't have their own rabbi. They don't. So with whom can they have this conversation? And so when people learn that there's this Rabbi Nancy out there who you don't have to belong to her congregation, who will come and be there to listen with a compassionate heart. And often I find these individuals will often request, "Will you please say such and such at my funeral?" Or "Will you please let my wife know how much," or my husband, or my children to know that it meant so much, whatever it is, At those funerals, when I have the honor to officiate at those funerals, it's such a different experience for everyone who's in attendance, and the comfort that it brings the family, that their mom or their dad or their spouse or whatever had that connection with me before it was too late to share. It's so different than when I honestly find that most of the services I do, I don't know the individual, and I'll meet with the family to learn about the person who died. And then I'll say, "I never had the honor to know so-and-so, but in meeting with her family, I've learned and will share with you," whatever. So it's the comfort that it can bring an individual who's dying and their family it's beyond rewarding. I feel very
That is so beautiful. And I'm so glad you're sharing that, because I think that this is, I want to call it a movement. This is something that I'm never going to forget what you just said. And if anybody is dying, I'm going to make sure, whether it's me or somebody else I know, to make sure if they have that connection with somebody, that opportunity is out there for them. I think it's easier on everybody. I mean, let's face it, you're not going to stop it. Every one of us is going to. So we might as well make it as beautiful and easy and as possible on everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I do hospice work too, and there are hospice chaplains. Usually those chaplains aren't, even if they are rabbis, they're not necessarily able to or available to also officiate, or it's not allowed in their contract to officiate the funeral as well. And so with me as an independent, so to speak, I'm there to take them from stage A all the way through beyond, beyond death afterwards,
Right.
keeping in touch with the family if they want. I mean, I kind of leave it up to the family to let them know I'm here for you. If I can be of any support to you, this is after the funeral. And we have the custom in our Jewish faith about a year after the funeral to come back to the cemetery and to dedicate the stone, to do an unveiling. We call it an unveiling or a dedication. And it's a way to bring closure to the formal period of mourning, which is about a year. And I always say to families, you don't need a rabbi, but we're trained and we know how to make this a meaningful service. It's short, it's not another funeral. And so it's another way to kind of stay connected to the family if they desire. So it's all about meaningful, especially during this pandemic when we've lost so many people.
Yeah.
And those who feel so isolated. I work a lot with seniors and in memory care and assisted living communities as well, doing programming to engage the residents and to bring them joy and music. And so that's another piece of what I do.
So that's great. So like some of the communities, I'm assuming they hire you, you come in, you do a program, and then I can imagine people just love you, and then you're available if someone needs to talk or wants to talk, or you.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that more of those kind of situations would occur. But I'm not an ambulance chaser, and
No, I didn't mean it.
No, I know you didn't, but I thought it would be nice for these people who live in these places to know that if they want to have the one-on-one, if they want to build this kind of relationship, while they can, and have these kind of conversations, or to introduce me to family members, which has happened at some situations. Yeah.
But I think this is sort of a new, that maybe if you're 90 right now, you don't think this way, but I think people will start thinking that we can be less afraid to talk about death, and if less, that it will become hopefully more acceptable to want to reach out to somebody, to want to talk to them, for the families beforehand, and for they're just the same way they were saying, I need a rabbi. They're just used to doing everything a certain way. And maybe over time, they'll think, well, maybe we should talk to a rabbi beforehand while we can get to know our rabbi and, get some counseling and have a better experience.
Absolutely. I have a few people now that have heard about the work I'm doing, and I meet with them. They decide how often we meet, and my fee is very reasonable. And I don't have an agenda. I spend most of our hour together listening. Whatever it is that's on their heart that they want to speak about, it may have nothing to do with being Jewish, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Whatever they want to talk about, whatever is meaningful to them. And if they feel this has been comforting, want to do this again, let's, take out our calendars and schedule another time to meet. Fine, and And then I take notes, to make sure, because it could be weeks or months, before I see them again. And I meet with a lot of people. And so I have to keep it all organized.
Yeah, but I think the agenda is to bring comfort.
Oh,
That's what you're sending out to people. And if they need you, you're the personal Rabbi Nancy can bring that comfort. It's so wonderful.
thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for taking this time, and before the sun goes down and you have to run off to
Shabbat, yes.
Shabbat. I really, really appreciate you being with us. And if anybody wants to get in touch with a rabbi, they can contact me. They can contact Rabbi Nancy Landsman. You're here and it's really easy because it's just rnlandsman@gmail.com.
So it's N.D. Landsman. N.D. for Nancy, my middle name Diamond. So N.D. Landsman at Gmail. Yep.
Okay. And reach out to me and I can make the connection. So
thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you for all the work.
Happy holidays. Enjoy.
Happy holidays.
Your lifetime forth.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.